Good afternoon. It's good to see everyone. Um, just before we begin, um, two things. First of all, I just want to express appreciation, b'shem all the Chavrei HaKollel. I've heard this privately from different people, and also I've experienced this personally to Rabbi David Markel for his meridika work. It's just so Rabbi David should know the nachas of his work. It's not. It doesn't get counted just by the people who write and respond, and also not even by all the people who follow. Just being part of a Lebedik Beis Medrash itself gives such an experience and invigorates the learning. And really, it's really appreciated. You wake up in the morning and you see a few messages. Okay, I've got to get going. There's so much more to do over here, and whenever you feel you've accomplished, it gives such a good bit to show. So there's always so much more. So thank you very much. Another just important announcement is about the upcoming Farbrengen. So tonight's Chavdala Teves, but as a service to the Chavrei HaKollel, it's been pushed off to Motzei Shabbos. In fact, it's interesting. The first Chavdala Teves was actually on a Motzei Shabbos, so it's opportune time. That's when the Stalks of the Alter Rebbe was, and the Rabbi is going to be Farbrengen. So please, whenever or as much as possible, if you could be mishtatif, and just to make a special request to please make every effort to be present. B'chlal, by shiurim, it's always geschmack. The more people have the cameras on, it's appreciated, but especially by Farbrengen. Rabbi, it's the first Farbrengen, and if the more we'll participate and be present, it will be the more we'll gain, and the more we gain as a community to get to know each other. So I'm looking forward to Mitzvah to Motzei Shabbos. Okay, so last time I believe we went overtime. So we're going to try this time. It's a work in progress, learning how to balance and to work things out. So we're going to try limit the conversation to focus on the heart of the mind. We're going to be focusing on Derech Mitzvosecho, just to bring out what's the Nakuda. But before we do so, I would like just to point out another important thing. There are many points which are being brought out by Reb Asher in the Monday Shiur, which is a preliminary Shiur. It's a Hakdama Shiur. So it's really yesh bazeh mashein bazeh. I mean, obviously, every Shiur is designed for whoever wants to follow one or the other. It's possible. But ultimately, if to get the full experience, then it really is kedai to hear both. Okay, so first 2 words of Akdama to frame the Sugya where we're holding, and then we'll get into how we're going to focus, how we're going to be approaching our mind. Up until now, what we've seen in the first 2 weeks, where we did the idea of Shefa Leki and Hachonas Kelim, the idea was to clarify what is happening with Parnasa. And we came to some kind of conclusion that there's what happens at Rosh Hashanah, there's what happens during our personal daily davening, and then there's what we contribute, so to speak, through our work, and what that looks like. Now we're looking at the whole sugya from a different perspective, so to speak, from a bird's eye view. Let's look at it how the Eibishter looks at it. In other words, let's approach this from the Chassidus approach. What we are learning is not just figuring out the mechanisms of Seder Ishtalshelus, by understanding the way things are really all as part of the big picture of Achdus Hashem. Now, in order to explain this, the Tzemach Tzedek comes from the direction of the idea of Shituf an Avodah Zarah, and in order to explain the Shituf an Avodah Zarah, the Tzemach Tzedek is going to go into an elaborate discussion of the mazolos. And this is all going to be to help us understand our correct perspective b'negeya to our Avodah in Parnas. Now, in short, the way the Tzemach Tzedek does it is like this. The mazolos are mamutzoy. They are intermediaries. The Eibishter is mashpia to the mazolos, and the mazolos l'cheira transmit this shefa to us. Likewise, our parnasa. Obviously, the Eibishter is the one who's giving us parnasa. Of course, hazanas ha'olam kulei b'tuvei. However, l'cheira, there's something happening in the middle. There's the work. We go to work and we get a paycheck, or we make a parnasa in business, however it is. So there's something which is giving us this parnasa. So the same way it would work in mazalos, it works physically within our parnasa. Comes Chassidus and explains that the mazalos are not really an inyan for itself. And therefore, likewise, when we look at our parnasa, we should also not be looking at our work and the product of our work as anything as an inyan b'fnei atzmai, elamai einin milvad. And that's going to give an added depth and a richness to everything we've learned about looking at the shefa and looking at the kelim with a proper perspective. Now, when the Tzemach Tzedek does this, the Tzemach Tzedek does it in two stages. Now, with a careful reading of the Tzemach Tzedek, Sai in Perek Beis of the Tzemach Tzedek and Sai in Perek Gimel, it's very clear that the Tzemach Tzedek is doing this in two stages. And what we want to do in this afternoon is to clarify what the two stages are and what purpose they're serving. What do we want to gain from this way of dissecting the two issues? What are the two issues, and how are they applied when it comes to Parnas? So let's just begin in order to ground the conversation, to see the way it is in the Tzemach Tzedek. In Perek Beis of Mitzvas Milah, the Tzemach Tzedek says that, generally speaking, Havayahu Elikim, there is Elikim, but really the hashpah is, it's only Peleg Elikim, Mole Mayim, but in other words, the Elikim is only coming over here to be Mefalik, meaning to split within the Shefa, but the actual Shefa is really Shemavai. Over here, we're talking obviously in Atzilus. We'll get to the actual explanation, but we're saying in Atzilus there is Eraliki, there's Kalim. True, but the Kalim are only here, the Shem Alikim is only coming to categorize or to put things in specific Hagdaras. But what the Shefa is in Aliki, which is from Shem Havai. Then he follows, and this is a very important lashon. This is in Perek Beis. V'gam be'emes, haregam guf ha'kelim v'ha'esis atzmam ha'ma'alimim eina nikra helem klal be'emes etzle yizbarech sha'arei heim nimshochim v'nishavim mimenu yizbarech. So the Tzemach Tzedek is adding, not only are the kelim carrying the Eir, and the Eir is really Inyan Aliki, but the actual kelim are also Inyan Aliki. Heim nimshachim v'nishavim mimenu yizbarech. So we're going to need clarification. What are these two things? One is the emphasis on the air, the other is on the keli. If we follow through this cheshbon, if we go to Perek Gimel, over there also the Tzemach Tzedek says there's two things. One is that if you look at Parnasa, our correct perspective has to be that's just like the mazolas, it's only kigaras and biyad ha'chetzif. It's as the axe is being held in the woodchopper's hand, and it doesn't have any independent mitzias, so to speak. Then he says another word, v'gam be'emes. Let's read the lashon harei enen milvade. V'hakil botu b'mitzias mamash kiziv hashemesh b'shemesh v'zeu shomer Reb Chanina b'chulim lemachshefes ein sham. There's another word, the Gemara in Chulin, enen milvade, afilu ma'asik shavim, that everything is bottled with mitzvahs. So again, we have these two stages. There's the hashpah, and then there's a certain v'gam be'emes. B'pashtus, we follow the Mamer. We're again using the same words, v'gam be'emes. So b'pashtus, the same two ideas which are being discussed in Perek Beis regarding the Eres and the Kelim, the Guf HaKelim. So too are these two in Yonim over here, that there's the Garzim biyad ha'cheitzev, and then we're not going to be satisfied only with the Garzim biyad ha'cheitzev idea. We want to also introduce Einen Milvad. So what we're going to have to learn this afternoon is what are these two ideas and why they're both necessary. Obviously, Einen Milvad is bringing out a sharper or deeper point than Garzim biyad ha'cheitzev. Once I say Garzim Einen Milvad, so why did I need the whole introduction of Garzim biyad ha'cheitzev? So obviously they are yesh b'zeh mashein b'zeh. They're being mashlim each other. It's all part of one big picture. Okay. So far so good.
Yes.
Okay.
What's the rule about comments and questions on the way? Supposed to keep them to ourselves, or?
Right. So the probably comments and questions best would be to put them in the chat, and then either if we'll stop at some point, or at the end, the Mitzvah we'll have time for that, for a more elaborate. Okay. So what we're going to do now is, first of all, to understand what are the mazalas. Understand, not going to be working with the Seder of the Maimah. We want to understand first what's the mistake, what's the Torah's Enish, what was their perspective on the mazalas, and then we want to get back to understanding what's the truth, and lefizeh we'll come back to the Parnas. And the way the Tzemach Tzedek is setting this up, as we've already established, is that there are two pratim. So in the Torah's Enish, there's going to be the two pratim, and when it comes to what's the truth, there's also going to be these two pratim. This is how we're going to have to approach it. Okay. First of all, what are the mazals? So in layman's language, without getting involved in the astrology or the astronomy, let's begin with the Galgal. Literally speaking, we're talking over here how the Rambam describes the solar system, the sun, the moon, the stars. It's built that there's planet Earth in the middle. Surrounding planet Earth is an envelope of atmosphere, of air, which is a layer, obviously round, not just like a circle, but like a ball. And it fully surrounds the planet. Within this galgal, as the Rambam described it, is like one of the layers of an onion, which fully surrounds the middle of the onion. The sun, the moon, the stars, they exist within each one, within their own galgal. So the lowest galgal carries the moon. On top of that, we have 9 galgalim. The fourth one is where the sun is placed. And so we go higher and higher till what's called the Galgal HaMazolos. The Galgal HaMazolos are different patterns of stars, all fixed within this atmosphere, trapped, and they don't move. What happens is the Galgalim themselves move. So these atmosphere, what we see, what to us is transparent, are actually different layers of atmosphere, and they move. And they carry the sun, the moon, the stars with them at different speeds and even different directions. According to the Rambam, the actual Galgalim have a nefesh. Now, without getting in the chat, there was a discussion whether the Rambam and Chassidus, how it works together. Let's not get involved in that. But generally speaking, all Nivraim really have a nefesh according to Chassidus. So we could talk about the Galgalim regardless about the nefesh of them. They all, because they have a nefesh, so we understand their movement as something which is an expression of who they are. So whether it means literally consciousness or some kind of cognitive experience, or we're talking over here about, as the Alter Rebbe describes in Sharet Amunah, even an Evan has a nefesh. To our discussion, it doesn't make a difference. What we're saying is that they have some kind of ruchnistic experience alibedans. Now, these Galgalim, because of the bittul to the Eibishter, they move in a perfect circular fashion, which, as we know, Shchinta b'Ma'arava, that's why the Galgalim are all being pulled by the Galgal Atshi towards Ma'ariv. And that's why they're bowing. And that's why we say that Shamayim Mesaprim Kveit Keil, just look at the heavens, you'll see how they are, so to speak, telling the story of giving cover to the Eibishter. And we see that L'cham Mishtachvim, they bow to the Eibishter. These mazolos are, now, let's just clarify. The mazolos could be in a simple sense, we're talking about the 12 separate patterns which exist in the highest Galgal. And they move, and every month they're in a different place. Nowadays, they're not in exactly the same place because things have shifted around in the calendar. But generally speaking, they are each one connected a specific month. And these are the mazalos, what we know, mazal adar dogim, and the mazal of Iyar is sheir v'chum. Then there's lower, the mashal maidim, the fact that we don't make kiddush Friday night on wine between 6 and 7 is because during that hour, maidim, which is Mars, which exists in the 5th Galgal, that's when it's being made on the world. So therefore, we're careful because of the mazel, which corresponds to Mars. What's the teichen of all of this? Is that if we imagine, obviously figuratively, that the Eibishter is Yosef B'Shamayim. And Yosef B'Shamayim is higher than all of these Galgalim. Galgalim are, so to speak, layers which surround the earth, which are between the Eibishter and our world. So these Galgalim are, so to speak, literally begashmias in space, mumutzoim, in between. And therefore we understand our piteichen that what the Galgalim represent are that the Eibishter is mashpia to our world through these Galgalim. So we know a rule, which very literally means that the wheat grows when the sun shines. So the sun, which is in the Galgal Haravi, the Eibishter gives parnasa to the world. How is the Eibishter delivering this parnasa? Through the Shemesh. So it's not just a technical occurrence in Teva. The Shemesh is actually, in a way, closer to the Eibishter. And the Eibishter is, through the Shemesh, it's the messenger for the Eibishter to send the shefa of growth in the world. And that's why literally the tvua grows then. It says, Meged Geresh Yerachim. Apparently the Yerakis, the vegetables, they grow through the influence of the moon. So that's the closer galgal, the first galgal, which is next to our world. What would this mean b'pashtus? Is that when the Eibishter is being mashpia something to the world, the Eibishter is obviously removed from the world. The Eibishter is ruchni or eliki. We're looking for something physical to happen. In order for that transition to happen, the Eibishter has to transmit it through an intermediary. As the Lashon is, kegarzen b'yad ha'cheitzef, which on a very simple level is, if I want to knock a nail into the wall, there's no way for me to do it with my fingers. Obviously, I'm the one who's doing it. But I don't speak the language of the nail. The nail has to feel force. And my fingers won't be able to do that. So what I do is I take a hammer who speaks the language of the nail. When you hit a piece of metal on another piece of metal, the second piece of metal will understand what we want from him to move. Obviously, the actual power is not coming from the piece of metal. The hammer didn't in any way possess any energy, and certainly didn't give energy to the nail. He can't give what he doesn't have. What the hammer does is deliver the energy which I have in my hand. He's simply a delivery boy to give over my energy in the language that the nail should understand what we want from it. That's kegarzen b'yad ha'cheitzef. So likewise, the Eibishter, in order for the Eibishter to transmit this shefa, the Eibishter speaks the language of the world. What's the language of the world? He talks through the galgalim. Okay. This is on a very pashut level. Comes the Tzemach Tzedek in this mind, and he says, let's understand this relationship a bit deeper. If the sun is physical and the world is physical, in what way do we get any advantage from the sun? Just like the Eibishter could make physical sun rays to speak to a physical earth in order to get the plants to grow. So why couldn't he lechatchila speak to the world? So the answer is because the galgalim have a ruchnis to them, and therefore they could be the right intermediary, meaning the galgalim are bottled to the Eibishter. And this is the idea of a mamutza. It's just to clarify what every mamutza means. Every mamutza is going to have to be something that speaks both languages. As a good meturgaman, a translator is someone who understands both. So the sun, or the galgal of the sun, over here, by him, we see it's apparent from his movement that he's bottled to the Eibishter. So he understands where the shefa is coming from. So he speaks kavyochel, the language of Elokus, to be bottled to the Eibishter. Because he's bottled, therefore he could be a recipient of this shefa, and he's also physical. Therefore he could transmit the shefa. Now, in Sidrim Dach, which is where the Alter Rebbe, where it's this same Mamer, in other words, if you want to check up, it's Amud Kuf Mem Beis, Amud Beis. The Alter Rebbe says that these two things, the fact that the sun is accepting the shefa and is delivering the shefa, is really the nefesh of the sun and the guf of the sun. So the nefesh is the fact that he is bottled, and the guf is literally the way he's transmitting the zif. These two things are the way the sun works as an intermediary. That's in order to explain this, the Tzemach Tzedek says, likewise, we have in davening. In order to be mamshich something, so we bow. To bow literally means to subjugate myself, but to bow also means to be mamshich, to pull down, baruch miloshan hamavrich esagefen, to bring down. Because whenever we want to bring something from ruchnis to gashmis, we need these two things. On the one hand, to be bottled, to allow for the Eira Liki to come, and on the other hand, to be mamshich it down. Now, obviously, these two things are not two separate ideas. It's like they are part and parcel of one Metzias called the Shemesh. In other words, if the ruchnius of the sun is bottled and the guf is just transmitting, so what have we gained from the sun as a memutz? Here, the ruchnius speaks the language of ruchnius and the gashmis speaks the language of gashmis. What's the idea of the sun? Is that the sun is one Metzias which has both. Perhaps to put it in other words, you could have, let's say, a Rav and a Talmud. So the Talmud sits in front of the Rav and speaks the language of the Rav and understands him. Then this Talmud goes on himself and becomes a teacher. Now he could teach perhaps a more simple student that wouldn't be able to understand the Rav. But then we're having two situations over here. The way the Talmud is accepting from the Rav, and then the way the Talmud is going to teach. Accordingly, the Talmud is becoming an independent Metzias. He is now the teacher. A more accurate Moshe would be not a Talmud who's later becoming a Rav, the way we would imagine the son, who's accepting Ruchnis to Geshefa and delivering it. A more accurate Moshe would be, let's say, a description of a shliach, or the ideal picture of a chassid. What he's doing is not accepting what the Rebbe is saying and delivering it further, but he is the subjugating of himself, and the delivery is one thing. I'm not someone which knows how to deliver. The fact that I could deliver itself is also coming because the Meshaleach is setting that up. Let's perhaps sharpen this nukud. What we want to gain from the fact that he's a memutza is that there's one place where the ruchnis and gashmis are meeting. If not, then we've gained nothing. There's ruchnis and there's gashmis. What do we need the mazalas for? So the answer is that because he is bottled, therefore who is he? He is something which is, his whole inyan is to deliver what the Elyon wants, what the Mashpia wants, and he's, on the one hand, is a Tachten, but speaks the language of El. Let's elaborate on this point further. A pashta kasha. So someone asked this kasha, sent me this question. In what way is the ruchnius of the world, the mazalas, more closer to the Eibusha than the gashmis? Shouldn't the biyachas to the Eibusha, ruchnius and gashmis is b'shava mamish? So the mazalas, we discussed this last time, is so to speak the ruchnius, and like you have the masikas of the tapuach, and then you could follow it where you could find the masikas in the nigin and the masikas in the dvar seichel. So the same thing we're saying over here is you have the idea of growth, and you have the idea of growth the way it is, not physically, but you have it the way the son understands it in his ruchnis. In the end of the day, it's all ruchnis. Seichel, ruchni, is not in any way closer to the Eibishter than Gashmis. They're both Nivroim, equally. The Mazalas are Nivroim. And it's created Yesh Me'ayin. So the answer is going to have to be, let's say, a good example would be from the guf. We know it says in Chassidus that the blood is the plea for where the nefesh rests. Ki adam hu nefesh. Why? Because the blood has in it warmth, and the warmth has a tnua of aliyah. The gashmis, like we see, fire rises. Therefore, the nefesh could be shayra in the dam. The loshon is the idim shebedam, the steam which comes out of the blood. That's where the nefesh could, so to speak, meet the physical part of the guf. So the obvious question is, what's the difference? What kind of gashmis there is on? If we're talking about a bone, or we're talking about blood, or we're talking about steam. A nefesh, which is the Metzias Ruchni, it's a pella, it's a kerach. How could it come into the guf anyways? A more edel gashmi, a more grabber gashmi? Do you think that a lighter color or a more a softer sounding note in a voice is closer to Dvar Seichel than a more coarse gashmi? This is gashmi, this is Ruchni. Likewise, let's ask a question a bit different. When it comes to preparing, let's say, for Rosh Hashanah, or preparing for Yechidus, or any preparation. On the one hand, we say we want to connect, Tava Shaychus. On the other hand, Chassidus always says that when it actually comes, it's an atzimistic thing. It's impossible to have any kind of preparation. It's a new hashpah, a new gili. It's bein arech. In other words, let's ask it like this: the chassid who prepared for yichidus and the chassid who didn't prepare for yichidus, is he any closer or further from yichidah? Someone meets the Rebbe, it's yichidah b'yichidah. It's a atzimistic thing. You can't. Of what use was there all your preparations? Just to clarify where we're going with this. When you have within the physical world a more edel gashmis, or broader to speak, even ruchnis and gashmis, biyachas to alakus, of what use is higher and lower within the lower realm if it's anyway yesh me'ayin bein arich? So the answer is bittul. Bittul means that, of course, you don't have a shaykhis, but you're getting out of the way. You're allowing for this thing which is bein arich to you to shine through you. The galgal hashemesh is not any more eliki than our physical wheat that grows. Even if he's about deva haskin, he's a ruchnistic thing. So what? Since when is our logic or even our ruchnistic experience more Eibishter, better than our physical world? We have to always be clear between Beira and Nivra as Yesh Ma'ayin Bein Arich. So what's the difference? He's turned to the Eibishter. In Afyidir Zakman Gevon, he's bowing, he's bottled. And therefore through him the emes could be made. Like a famous word the Rebbe has it a few times, as a Michtav Kolel in Taashir Chavav, that the Rebbe said the sun reflects in the sea and in every drop of water. Every drop of rain, if you look at it, you'll see a full reflection of the full sun. But there's only one tonight or two tonight. It can't be dirty, and it has to be gewonnen to the shemesh. It has to be facing the sun. The difference between Gashmius and Ruchnius is not whether it's closer. The difference is whether it's facing the Eibishter or not. And since the Eibishter, with his Pele, is coming, he's going to come, and he's going to be mayor in the world. If you turn you back to him, it won't work. So just like we say, preparing for a Yom Tov or preparing for Yechidus, doesn't mean you became more Yom Tov dik or Yechidus dik. Obviously, that's going to be Ashpah Malamayla, but you're facing it. That when it comes, it's going to shine in you or through you. And that's the advantage of the mazolas, that they are Mishtachvim to Ma'ariv. They are bowing, they are facing. And this is the idea of the Galgalim saying Shira, that they are bowing to the Eibishter. Therefore, the relationship that they have with the Eibishter is different, so to speak, as I said before, like a shliach. I don't have an inyan for myself. Who am I? Is that the Meshalech is going to shine through me. According to Lefize, Chassidus explains very right the idea of Shemesh begiving daim. Says Yeshua stopped the sun. So l'cheira the lashon should be stopped. Shemesh begiving amoid, or however you want to say it. What's this lashon that the sun was silent? The answer is because the way the sun works and functions is because he's constantly saying shira. He's constantly expressing his bittul to the Eibishter. What Yeshua did, he changed the ruchnis of the sun. He said the sun should be silent. Therefore, he will also stop moving. And that's doim miloshen vayidim aaron to be silent. He made him into, in other words, a daim, which is a silent mitzvahs. Okay. Is this good? This is making sense? If there's any questions, please, now's the time.
So hold on. So the Shemesh begiving them worked because, what's it called? Because the sun stopped saying Shira, so the Goyim aren't getting the Chayas.
Right.
But at the same time, I had this question when we learned the Mamer, what do you call it, in the Mitzvas Milah. At the same time, it's also Derech Mitzvosecho Yalim. The moon stopped also. At the same time, so the sun isn't talking, it isn't saying Shira, so therefore it's not expressing its bittul to the Eibishter, so it's not receiving its chayus, so therefore the Canaanim aren't receiving the chayus. But at the same time,
the moon is the makar for Yidden.
Right.
So
if
I
the
don't
moon
know.
It
could be over here. We have to bring in there's the question is always how Yidden are menatzech in Milchama. It could be there's another rule that in Mazal Yisrael, Yidden are not limited to the Mazalas. I don't know. It's a good question.
But then why does he need the moon to stop? Then ignore the moon. I don't care about the moon. I just need the sun to stop.
So it's a good question. I don't know. Okay, so this is the idea of Mazalas Bichlal, that they are memutza between the Eibishter and the world because of their bit. Now, Tzemach Tzedek takes this idea deeper. And this is where he brings in the idea of Havaya Elikim. Till now, we've been talking within the realm of world. Sachakel Mazalis are just the ruchnius of the world. This is a logical thing. That in order for something aliki to come into Gashmis, we need to have a bittul of the world to accept that to be the intermediary. What's the depth? We're pulling away the curtain, like everything in Siddur, to show how this begins in the Eibishter Gufa. Is that we know in Atzilus there's Chesed and there's Gvur, or there's Gili and there's Halu, or what we would call more generally Eres and Kelim. And the same relationship that the Eibishter is having with the world, really this same story plays out within the Eibishter himself. Which generally speaking are the two names of the Eibishter, Havaya and Elikim. So the Tzemach Tzedek goes on an elaborate explanation, the difference between Havaya and Elikim, and comes to the conclusion that really all of everything Elikim has is Havaya. Elikim doesn't have anything for itself. Elikim is delivering the Shefa to the world. And Bereshis Bara Elikim Dafke. True. But who is the Mahave is Havai. So it's, as he says, Peleg Elikim Mole Maim. What does Elikim do? He just comes to split between one thing and another, to divide, to categorize, to make distinct nivroim. But what is the hashpah? It's from Shem Havai. Up until now, we have just the understanding of how this works in our world and how this works in Lamai. Comes Chassidus, and this is what the Tzemach Tzedek is doing in our Mamer, and takes it all a step further. Not only is Havayahu Elikim saying that Elikim doesn't carry its own shefa, he's just the delivery boy of Havaya, and likewise, we're going to say Lamata, the Shemesh, it doesn't have anything on its own. He's only Kigarz and Biyad HaChaitzev. We're saying something far deeper. Havaya Hu Elikim. These are Bichlal not two things. The Keich HaTzimtzum of the Eibishter and the Keich HaGili of the Eibishter aren't two separate things. The Eibishter is one. And it's the same Eibishter which is Gili and which is Hel. This is the way it's the Lashon in the Maimon that Tzemach Tzedek. Hare Gufa Kelim Va'esis Atzmam is Ene Nikra Helem Etzlem Yisbarach Shem Nimshachim V'Nesavim Imenu Yisbarach. They are also Eliki. This is a fundamental Indian Chassidus, which we're not going to get into now, but I'm sure many are familiar with the idea that the Kelim of the Eibishter, Kelim da Atzilus, is also Elikus. Gvura is, we could say, Ata Giber. They are all, or Chesed, is the Eibishter is Mechakal Chaim B'Chesed. This is also Inyan Eliki. In other words, just like the Shem Shav Shekech B'Bilti B'Gvul, Kach Shekech B'Gvul. Therefore, we have two important nukudas we want to take out from our mind. First of all, that the Eir which is coming through Elikim, through Kelim, is Havaya. It Bichlal doesn't belong to Elikim. Secondly, Elikim itself, Kelim, is also Inyan Elikim. How will that translate in the Shemesh? So we say, V'gam be'emes harei eino milvad. The first yisod which we understood was that the mitzias of the world, the shefa is coming in the sun. The shefa is coming from the Eibishter, and the mazalas are just transmitting kegarz and biyad hachetz. Now we're talking about not what the hammer is delivering, but what the hammer is. What about the hammer itself? Over here, we're going to have to say also the hammer is Eina Milvad. And this is the story that I bring from Rabbi Hanina with the Machshefes, that the Rabbi Hanina didn't have any reason to be afraid of Kishuv because Eina Milvad, even the Keich HaKishuv. So literally, the Gemara Rabbi Pashtus is saying that the Kishuv cannot affect Rabbi Hanina because Eina Milvad, the Eibishter, there's nobody who runs the world besides for him. But once Chassidus explains Eina Milvad to mean not only that there's only one Eibishter, there's only one Keich, but that there's only one thing. So we're going to touch the Gemara to say Eina Milvad afilu kshafim, that the kshafim is also Inyan Eliki. There's nothing which comes from the Eibishter which is not him. So the actual sun is also Inyan Eliki. So to summarize, what we've done over here is, first of all, what are the mazalas? How do they work as memutzoim? Because of their bittul, their shira, and the havana of a memutza is that the bittul itself, it is what delivers. So when I'm bowing for Baruch in Shemina Esrei, so the bowing and the hamshacha is one and the same. I'm just transmitting. It's not just I'm accepting and giving. I'm a transmitter. And therefore, the shefa is in and eliki. Sai in the world, and sai the way it works in Atzilus, and Havayahu Elikim. The Elikim is delivering Havaya. The second point is that not only are we delivering inyan aliki, but the actual kli in Atzilus, and therefore the actual shemesh is also einen milvadim. That's also inyan aliki. Now, let's go to the mistake. What was the mistake of Toz Enish, and how we're going to translate that in Aveda with the Toz and Parnas? Let's just clarify. We changed course over. I said we're going to start with a mistake, but Lepoil, we started off. We actually did go according to the Seder of the Tzemach Tzedek. What is the mistake? So there's a fundamental idea over here, which is gratitude, which is an interesting thing. We have a klal, Chamre lemore tevusi l'shak. Thank the waiter. Now in Beis Medrash L'Shluchim, the Rebbe says clearly that the reason you should tip the waiter is not because, or only because you're going to gain from it, but it's the right thing to do, which is the idea of hakaras hatov. In other words, literally, it's usually like that. Unless you're planning on coming back to this restaurant or using this taxi driver again, why should you tip him? But it's like a natural instinct that something I gained from, I'm bottled to. I owe him. Let's say it a little bit better. If this is where I come from, this is where I am, in a way. Just like, and we say generally in Chassidus, the olol is nimshach to the ilah. The midah is nimshach to the seichel. This is where I come from. So it's almost unnatural, and you're doing a disservice to yourself to not show appreciation, because you're not connecting to where you come from. On a broader level, this is actually the yesod that the Rebbe explains for the mitzvah of kibbud avim. It's hakaras hatov. That's why mitzvah of kibbud avim be'etzem is not. Again, it's not something obviously which is kedai. It's not a good investment. In order that my father should give me more money. It's unnatural. It's not human for a child to not have this healthy relationship. It's healthy for him. Elamai in mitzvahs kibbud avim, it's true because his parents are balich bechira shleisha shutfim ba'adam. So it's accurate. It's the way a person should be approaching his parents. When it comes to the garzen, the natural instinct is, and therefore to the mazolas, is to thank them. So this was the beginning of Tois Anish, is the shefa is come. Obviously, the Eibush is giving the shefa, but it's coming through them. What was the mistake? The mistake was that they are not a someone. You can't thank a thing. You could only thank someone with an identity. They are not Bali Bechir. You can't thank something because there's no one to thank. Expressing appreciation is, in other words, saying you chose to do it. Now, again, we're not talking over here about Hanife, that in order for me to gain. But still, I'm saying that you are a somebody. This was the nukud of the mistake. Without getting too complicated in the Beis Medrash L'Shluchim, but there's two ideas over here. Let's leave the Beis Medrash L'Shluchim for a second. There's two ideas. But Pashtus, the issue is, we're talking about the shefa. The nefesh of the son, I believe that the nefesh of the son made a bechir. Kumt Chassidus and says, no, the nefesh, the son doesn't decide anything. In other words, don't look at the shefa as something which is coming because of the son. It's all coming from the Eibishter. But then there's a different mistake. True that we're not talking about the shefa, But the actual sun is something. So therefore, I have to work within the boundaries of how the sun works. Over here, our Mamer is mechadish that no. The sun's existence is also, even the Guf Hashemish, the actual sun, is also an Inyan Aliki. The Gvul is also from the Eibishter. Alikim is Havai. That's the Be'emes which we're being madish the whole time in our mind. If we'll translate this in Aveda, we'll see that we're bringing out two very different points. One bepashtus is that how do I look at my parnasa? If I look at my parnasa the way it is bepashtus, this is the intermediary, and I have to be grateful to the fact that I'm a lawyer. So law is what's giving me my parnasa. And likewise, everything is, so therefore it's a certainly if we're talking about people who I owe my parnasa to, I have to be grateful to them. This is all understanding where the shefa comes from. Comes Chassidus, and this is what we saw last Sugya, the first part of the Inyan, that no, the shefa comes from daven. Generally speaking, but more specifically, there's the way the Eibishter goes on Rosh Hashanah, and then the way I have a daily davening every day to be Makabel. So therefore, it doesn't come from there. That's not what the shefa is. But then I have a different child. The actual work it's coming through him. So I still have to work with it. The guf kader Hashemish. Over here comes Chassidus and it's saying a tifrezach enimil vadi. Even the actual physical system of how the parnasa works, that also comes from the Eibishter. Everything is being orchestrated by the Eibishter. So, if we'll summarize, what we learned last time is that why do we need to daven in order to accept the shefa, and why do we need to go to work in order to make kelim? Because there has to be a physical kli. In the mashal of the Alter Rebbe, there's the chesed, which I'm transmitting and fitting, so to speak, into the egos, into the nut, and then there's the actual physical nut. In our Maimon, we're dealing with both. Side the Eira Liki is a Liki. That's something easier for us to accept. But then there's another point. Even the Kli itself is also in Yanaki. Now, the nafgemine, the way it's going to be in Aveda, I don't want to be makdim as ucher. Once we're going to learn the Rebbe's sichos and the whole rich world, the way the Rebbe brings us into it, we're going to find a whole new depth. But just as a teaser, if all we're talking about is looking beyond parnasa, then the parnasa itself is just a hell of a hest. And we should be focusing only on our daven. The way Chassidus teaches us is that no, the parnasa itself is also inyan aliki. So therefore, for example, without understanding that the parnasa is a kli, the way I would approach, the Yiddish approach is, to was wenige parnasa, and the ikir is, the most important thing is the eira leki. Daven and learn. Because that's the shefa leki. Comes Chassidus and says, no, the actual parnasa is also in Yanaliki. And therefore, in the Rebbe's language, the parnasa is your shlichus. It's a holy work. It's not b'di'evet, something to get beyond. This is your shlichus. Adam atem, as we saw in the Kuntra Somayel, you have a job to reflect the Eibishter and to do in this world. So if a person wants to know what's my shlichus in the world, it's not the more often I leave my office to go and learn, the more often I use my office, the more often I use my connections to be mefarsim Shem Mitzvah Neich. As the Rebbe always explains, what I do in Gashmis is what my union is. Because Ein Milvade, Afilu Ma'asik Shapim. So our Mamer over here is already setting the stage for what we're going to be doing after Yud Shvat, Mitzvah Hashem, seeing how the Rebbe turns around the whole Sugya, that it's, there's obviously focusing on the Teichen, on the Ruchnius, the Shefa Eliki, and then there's going to be, how do we look at the actual Kelim, the Guf HaShemesh, Shem Elikim, and when it comes to Parnasa, how to look at the actual Parnasa that we're doing with the glasses of Chassidus, that the Parnasa itself is Inyan Eliki. Just for Mamer Mitzvas, there's a beautiful Maimah, Sfartem Tovshin Lamedvov, from the Rebbe, that's kedai to look at. As we mentioned before, the Sidrim Dach. L'cheira, without getting involved too sharp, to make too many chilukim dachim, but generally speaking, this nekuda is what the Rebbe says at the end of Sif Gimel in B'yei Mashtei Yosor. B'yei Mashtei Yosor, the Rebbe says as al losh. The end of Sif Gimel, after explaining that it's only kegarzen be'ad ha'chetzev, the Rebbe says a loshen, b'chitzenius nire sha'ashpoya adei kechavim u'mazonis. Why? Because u'mipnei sheyesh lehem mailash mitzad zeim ru'im liyis mumutzoy. The Pashtus, this is a very surprising loshen from the Rebbe, because l'cheira they do have a mind. I mean, there's a reason we use the hammer as a memutza, because, as discussed, the hammer speaks the language of the nail. There's a reason we use the mazolas, because the mazolas are the memutza. Of course, they have a mila, they have an advantage. What's the Rebbe is describing over here, that the mistake of respecting the chavim mazolas is not just where the shefa is. You should not respect them for what they are. Don't even appreciate their mind. They don't have a mind. They do. That's why they exist. So clearly, the Rebbe is saying over here something far deeper. Even the actual mazolas, the actual garzen, is also because this is the way the Eibishter set it up. It's all from the Keich HaGvul from the Eibishter. It's bekavana the way the Eibishter wants it to be. But the etzem, it's also a Inyan Alik. This is, in one word, the way the Rebbe, in one lashon, says this whole drasha, that the Torahs and Mipnei Sheyesh and Maila are not just the Torahs, because they are the ones which are given. Okay. Oh wow, the chat looks busy. Let's just 1 second.
Can you just address, before question specifics,
Sure.
the put in the Teves, the Maimah, the Frierdiker Rebbe? I mean, is there something unique there, or it's just the same thing in the Frierdiker Rebbe?
Right. Who's speaking? I'm sorry.
Eliyahu.
Oh, Eliyahu. Shalom Aleichem. Yeah. So basically, what the Frierdiker Rebbe is doing is saying the same thing, but the Frierdiker Rebbe goes in Nefesh HaAdam. Meaning, if you look at the Tzemach Tzedek talks two things. The way is L'mayla and Elokus, meaning in Achdus Hashem, and then translates it on a very practical level. Frierdiker Rebbe in the Sprach of Aveda brings it into Nefesh HaAdam. We didn't have time to get into it, but that's the focus. So it's I don't think it's a new idea, but he's really exploring a whole new area, bringing it into Aveda, into Midas. Pashat. L'cheir. Dov Slavin wrote over here, was explained why you need to elaborate the first beer, the air. Oh, so no, we didn't get back to that. Good point. So l'cheira, let's just talk about the chisaron of the kli. The problem is that that's not true. It's not accurate. In other words, we have to understand two things. Obviously, I mean, the maskana of Chassidus is that the kli and my parnasa is inyan and elikus? If so, then let me stay in the office all day. Why do I need to daven and learn? So first we have to bring out the basic point that the shefa is inyan eliki, and in order to get shefa eliki, you have to be misyachas to the elikus. You have to be bottled to the elikus. Then there's another tiferet word of ein milvade afilu kshafim, even the mitzias of the gashmis. But it would be very dangerous to skip to stage 2 without doing stage 1, obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
If you look.
Okay, there's another question over here from Mendel Schmotkin. Okay, so that's summarizing in one word, Mamish, the point. The first Yisod in Aveda is to look at him only as a garrison. And obviously we don't thank the garrison. We thank the wood chopper, not the garrison. We don't say that this building was built by bulldozers. It was built by a contractor. It was built by people. But then the Rebbe adds a different thing that it's bichlal nirash yesh le'mayla. So even the inyan of a garrison not. But as discussed, you have to work in these two stages, one after the other. You can't skip to stage 2. So Mendel's asking Benegeh the Tzemach Tzedek. So the question is obviously how you read the Tzemach Tzedek. This is a fundamental question when you approach in Chassidus. The Tzemach Tzedek is very cryptic. He just writes it bekitzer, en milvad. So is the Tzemach Tzedek being meramis all the way to this part of B'yem Hashtiyasa? First of all, he's clearly saying that the kelim are inyan aliki. Yeah. The emes is, I don't want to really go over time. Really, the B'yem Hashtiyasa is saying even deeper, even further, because the B'yem Hashtiyasa is saying that this comes from the fact that the Eibush is not mugder. I mean, this is like going into the whole sichs of the Rebbe in Nes and Teva. It's coming from the fact that the Eibush doesn't have, is expressing his bligeder. I don't know if we want to get into that. The Pashtus is, this is what the Tzemach Tzedek is dealing with. That also the Kli. I'm not sure what you're asking, but Mendel's writing again. He doesn't skip it. First he says and then he also says obviously these 2 points are negate.
In L'chaira, in Pshutish al-Mikra, there's a shtickle stira, which maybe this biur is also sort of talking to that. That if you look in the Rishonim and Asher Chalak Hashem Lekecha Chala Amen, Rashi says that Asher Chalak, that he gave them Mokim Nitus. But in other places it says, and I'm pretty sure both of these are brought from the Maimorim, that Sistaka Azoyas, Sistaka do Achilik between how the Shefa comes to Umas Olam and how the Shefa comes to Yid. In fact, I think in Kuntus Samayan maybe it brought that. Yeah. Right. So that's something I've been thinking about, like how do those two things fit together? And I'm just thinking now as you're talking that maybe that talks to the first point and the second point. I don't know.
100%. If you look in B'yem Hashtiyasa, the lashon is he's immediately following that thing. He says that Yisrael yedim she'rake garzim b'yadachitzim tzadged ladas shalem. Yeah. So obviously the Rebbe in B'yem Hashtiyasa goes weiter and weiter, but the pashtus is as was at this stage in the Mamer. What's the vart of a Yid? Because he looks at Teva totally different. Says we're also expecting from a goy to understand that the Eibishter is the one who's being mashpil. But he could think, okay, Abba Sof there's a garrison, but he's not mitzuv ala shituv. Because as far as he's concerned, he's being mekabel from the mazalas, and he's right. He is being mekabel from the mazalas. Only someone who comes from Sefer, who looks at gvul als a pratin bligvul, and sees the from bird's eye view, the whole picture, from him we expect this level of Achdus Hashem, with this approach, how to look at Teva, how to look at Parnasa.
But it's more than just approach. Essentially, what it seems to be saying is this is Takada Asada Yida lawyer and Havda Goya lawyer. This Taka Chilik is not just the Chilik that as the Yid versteht, as the Gazen Biad Chaytzev, and the Goy versteht es nicht. By the Goy is this Taka Gazen Biad Chaytzev, and by the Yid is I feel das nicht.
Right.
But that last part is not clear to me so much.
So, I mean, it really in the Purim, I mean, the emphasis, we're going to be doing this Sugya mamish later in the when we're going to be learning the Sikhs, we're going to be getting much more involved in the intricacies of this Indian. But generally speaking, there's all the Purim Sikhs where the Rebbe talks about that the Teva of a Yid is that is higher than Teva. Meaning, this is the difference between a Yid and a Goy. A Goy is aliba de emes on the Teva. Mashenkin a Yid is in Mazel Yisrael. Aliba de emes doesn't have this yachas. But this we're going to be seeing. We're going to be talking about the mon, and it's a whole different level of okay. Let's not be maktimus and mocher, but it will be dealt with. Saying once we come back. Okay. Agresi Shekayach. I think again we went over time. Next time we'll do tshuva. Maybe next week there's no shiur. It's a Chazar shiur, so that will be our tshuva. Okay. Sei gesund, guten Tag.
Rabbi Yossi,
Yeah.
just a quick question. How is the Shlomi?
Oh, yeah.
How is the step of the Garzon? Like, how is that a step to Ina Milvade? It would seem like that's the complete opposite. The whole time you're saying that the hashpa, throughout the Maimarim, we're saying the hashpa could only come through these kalim, and you need it to translate it into the world. So it shows like the Garzon has a lot of value. And then you're saying Ina Milvade.
So the reason I'm saying Ina Milvade is because alibedems. One second. It's still true that Havaya comes through Elikim. I won't say Bereshis bara Havaya.
Right.
It's still true. But the fact that this quality exists is only because the Eibush set it up this way. It's not pshat that there is any intrinsic quality. There's no innate quality to this thing. What we're saying is that Hagufa is because, we're obviously saying a far deeper vart. We're going much higher. I mean, the way the system works is that it is a garzon. That's the fact. The fact is that it's a garzon. But the fact that he's a garzon is not even a garzon. It shouldn't be attributed to the garzon. Even the fact that you're a garzon. That goof is because it's just the rules that the Eibush set up, and he could have been set up in any other way. And which still remains true, even while he's being used as a garzon.
But isn't that totally different than Ina Milvade?
Why?
Ina Milvade is no Garzon. It's not even a Garzon. It's not, doesn't have...
No. Okay, let's get this clear. Ina Milvade, you're saying the Pashat, like we say, is Pashat Nishdok Welt. You're saying like Bittel must not exist.
The Welt itself is Eibishter.
Fine. So over here we're saying also the Welt itself is Inyan Aliki. Gvul is Inyan Aliki, and therefore the Garzon, Mazolas is also Inyan Aliki. Now the Guf HaShemesh is also an expression of Alakus. So the Eibishter is setting up a system within himself, how there's Eiris and Kalim, or the way it's going to be expressed in the world is that there's going to be a Shefa of Parnasa and a Keli for Parnasa, but these are all in Yanam Alikim. Just like we understand that the Parnasa is from Elikus, because the Azanas Eilam Pulai, so too even the Kalim is Elikus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the Inamavade way.
And could it be that the way that we approach like Parnasa also is tied into this, that the fact that you realize it's not just a Garzon, but the Eibishter actually makes you take the Parnasa more seriously, because you know it's now. If you would just think it's a
100%,
biyad, you wouldn't. Yeah.
100%. There's actually many sharp letters from the Rebbe to people who didn't deal with the Parnasa seriously. Where usually in Chassidus we madgish uberach havai lekecha b'chol hashetas. There's many letters where the Rebbe says you have to get a job. And it's not b'di'evet. It's not like, okay, we just have to work with the world, you have to do a shtadlus or all this l'shonos. No, this is your shlichus. This is b'chol asher taseh. We have a job over here, and it's b'kavana. 100%. Right now, we're just to clarify, the Tzemach Tzedek didn't say that. He just set up the Yesodis. When we're going to be going into the Sichos, where we're going to be seeing it b'fnim, it's going to be really, it's like it turns over the whole cook on everything we do in the world. It's not just, obviously all these things are not just about parnasa. It's about any social relationships, or about trying to buy a house, or about anything which is or being matzliach and learning. Any inyan gashmi. So there's we're used to thinking that the hashpah comes from the Eibishter. You have to understand that the kelim comes from the Eibishter, and this is a inyan aliki. Memelitz b'kavana. We saw already in the lashon. There's an inyan amik ma'id. It doesn't explain what it is. The inyan amik ma'id. And look at the sichos is explained a lot. Yeah. Okay. So mit sich sein mit Hashem Motze Shabbos, wo die Gräse verbringen mit Rabbi Asher, Lachov et Chav Dalet Teves. Sei gesund.